Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I, Ken, read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to, once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through, and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. For tonight's letter, we're going to be reading Lisa's experiences with Ricky. Can I just say that I always do find it very funny leading up to doing these evening recordings. I feel like I'm doing some sort of salacious gossip reading of someone's relationship where it's like, ooh, you thought they were your boyfriend, girlfriend, partner. Turns out they're actually a ticket to therapy and a whole interlude into understanding your potential attachment issues. But in all seriousness, though, I'm very excited to do this one. And even though I haven't read it, I am just, the first sentence is something that just really speaks to me. So let's get into Lisa's experience with Ricky. Lisa writes, Dear Ken, I'm a 41-year-old university professor. Now, my ex, Ricky, who's a couple of years younger than me, was my student when we met in 2023. Last year, we got closer and ended up getting involved. Now, this is me being very cheeky, very, 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 very cheeky, and just saying, you know, it's like a tale as old as time. The teacher and the student. Unfortunately, this one is, obviously we've got consensual age, so that's a good thing. But I also want to take a moment here to say too, even though this can be one of those experiences which highlights professional boundaries being blurred in ways that can actually obviously have a direct impact on one's, well-being because it's a power dynamic, teacher to student, I do want to just put that to one side and just say this happens so many times. And I think this from my own experience is that, you know, particularly in professional settings, it's very easy for lines to get blurred. And I'm not saying it's necessarily okay, but in life, relationships and professional, boundaries have a funny way of getting very easily, how do I put it? They can be very porous. As we get older, we find it much harder to make friends. There's obviously the conundrum that dating apps obviously aren't a reliable way of, obviously making long-term relationships. And I think that work can be such a great place to actually connect with people. And granted, one might say, well, it'd be best if Lisa was able to find a colleague, a fellow professor or teacher to, connect with. I still think that, it's interesting how these experiences sometimes happen where one thing leads to another and you try and navigate the connection in spite of some of the professional hurdles that are there. So, no judgment from me on my end with this particular story from the start, because it's just to say that this is one of those things where it can happen. And, I'm really keen to just dive straight into this. Anyways, Lisa writes, we started our relationship in April 2024. We were official in less than a month, and our dates used to last like 6 to 8 hours. Wow. Okay. We're off to the races. He told me he'd been looking for a girlfriend for a long time and was very happy with me. Within 2 months, he was already making plans for the future, buying a house, working together, and he was studying to become a nutritionist like me, but temporarily withdrew from college this semester due to his job. From the start, he shared important aspects of his life, and I think it's relevant to mention some of them. So, in his childhood, he'd been quite obese and had dealt with bullying his entire life. I can relate to that. That's a terrible thing to go through, and I'm sorry that he's gone through that. In 2020, he lost 50. Whoa, he lost 50 kilograms. Jesus, that's a lot in that amount of time. He also quit smoking and took up running. He told me that women had never really noticed him before, that he had very few sexual partners and was recovering from porn addiction, which had resulted in sexual difficulties. I was okay with that and believed we could work through it together. Okay, I want to take a moment here to say, wow, 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 wow to Ricky. Okay, so. Let's give the guy credit where it's due. Losing 50 kilograms in 2020 during lockdown, that was a very interesting year for people achieving certain fitness goals. In that, you know, it could have been extremely difficult given lockdown, or it could have been actually the basis for turning one's life around. That's huge. Also, he's quit smoking, taken up running, he's acknowledged issues with porn addiction. Like, if someone's admitting a lot of this stuff, right? This to me is not raising red flags. To me, this is demonstrating someone who seems to be capable of change, someone who's committed to themselves, wants to obviously improve their life. 50 kilograms in 1 year is mammoth. I know that in weight loss, depending on how much you've got, it can be sometimes, depending on who you are, easier to lose, some of those initial kilos until you get like obviously down to the 20% body fat sort of range where things start to slow down a bit, depending on what you do. But the other reason why I say that's massive, now, I am not a nutritionist. I am certainly not a personal trainer. But in my experience, just like in relationships, and I say this as someone who's had to go through a bit of a weight loss journey recently, slow and steady is usually the answer to a lot of these things because the risk of bouncing back from going too fast is notoriously high with dieting. So, the reason I bring this up is not to provide a bit of a warning to people being like, well, he's potentially going to have a rebound of weight. No, it's more just to say there's a lot of rapid change happening. And just like with the dates with Lisa, lots of getting together very quickly, 6 to 8 hour dates, there's intensity, right? And I'm just noticing this because it is important to see that whilst Ricky's very much a go-getter in certain aspects of his life, there's obviously a ferocity to which he goes for his goals, and I would not be surprised if this is indicative of a very dysregulated nervous system. But, anyways, let us continue. Okay. He presented himself to the world as a funny, happy guy, but according to him, the truth was that he wore this mask because, quote unquote, fat people have to be funny to fit in. Oh, he had low self-esteem, and I always tried to make him feel worthy, but he struggled taking compliments. Now, that is where I'm going to say we've got our warning light here. Now, I want to make it very clear. There's some stuff I want to say here out of sensitivity. I know from a lot of people, professionally speaking, and also just people I know in life, that being fat is something that is highly and heavily stigmatized by the public at large. And I think, Ricky saying fat people have to be funny to fit in really speaks volumes about how he feels internally about himself. He's had a history of bullying, and I'm really sorry that he's gone through that because that can absolutely leave a lot of legacy damage on someone. And it seems to me like that's probably been his survival strategy for socializing is being funny. And, it does also speak to his low self-esteem as well too. So I do feel very sorry for this guy. However, this could also indicate a bit of learned helplessness, and I could also imagine that he's someone who might actually struggle quite a bit with depression as well too. It's just masked by, the jocularity, if you will. So yeah, you know, definitely he's acknowledged, that he tends to have this, funny mask, if you will. And I may use the word masking, not in the neurodivergent context of the word, but more just to say he obviously is very aware of like how he presents. So good to know. Again, Ricky's someone who's actually reasonably self-aware. And I'm predicting that this relationship was not the stuff of long-lasting success based on the letters that I usually get. So isn't it interesting how we often think, oh, well, if they're self-aware, then they must be a viable partner. But it's like, no, self-awareness, unfortunately, is not a is not something that is a guaranteed metric for someone being on top of their stuff. Anyways, let us continue. I know I've been speaking a lot about some of this stuff, but I think there is some stuff here that's actually worth thinking about from a sensitivity point of view. Now, the reason I also said this was a warning light before I continue, one last thing is, when someone's self-esteem is low and that you feel like you have to constantly shovel in, compliments and you have to constantly try and prop that person up, that's where it's like we're entering into sort of red flag territory because that's not going to go anywhere unless that person wants to take charge of their self-esteem. So far, I get the sense that he's very much thinking about the goals for the external outcomes. If I look good looking, I will feel better about myself. If I'm funny, people will get on with me, etc. And he's had obviously difficulties with women in the past. Porn addiction makes me think that he's probably not doing a lot of these goals, for himself for the most part. It does sound like a lot of the stuff he might be doing is externally driven, and a little bit of external validation is not a problem, but it doesn't sound to me like he knows how to connect with himself and actually have that healthier relationship with himself. It sounds like there's probably a lot of internalized shame and, you know, condemnation of himself based on the bullying he's experienced. That's just a guess. All right, let's go on. After 2 months, problems started to arise. He had a lot of female friends, and he would say, the reason I have so many female friends is because they accepted me as the fat, funny friend while men bullied me. Okay, so he's obviously got a thing for being with women, and he's obviously got a bad history with men. And I felt uneasy about this. Later, I realized that being surrounded by women, even if they were just friends, boosts his ego. See, external validation seeking. I tried to understand and excuse his behavior, but at times I still felt disrespected. Sometimes he said he understood my point of view and apologized. Other times he said he wouldn't tolerate jealousy. This isn't jealousy, though. To me, it's like, Ricky, bro, this isn't jealousy. This is, defying the sanctity of a relationship. It's one thing to have female friends, but or, if you're a guy dating a woman who has like tons of guy friends, or you're a gay man with tons of like, a huge, um, clique of of other gay men, or a lesbian with a ton of like women, it's not so much the volume, it's not so much that you have friends, who are of that sexual sort of, category, if you will. It's the energy and the disposition and how you behave with them. And that's where there can be natural problems. And it's not necessarily a basis for jealousy. And I think he's misconstruing jealousy. And I think it's more about he doesn't like boundaries. So, yeah, interesting. In August, I went to meet his parents, and we arrived on a Friday night, and on Saturday morning, he went out for a run. He had gained some weight and prioritized exercising. Oh, yeah, so sounds to me like he probably isn't actually. This kind of goes back to what I was saying about the external validation thing. It sounds to me like he probably hasn't quite mastered weight loss to the point where he's navigating emotional eating and stuff like that. That's just a hunch that I have. I felt a little awkward being alone with his parents, but they were nice and everything went well. The next day, he did the same thing. Interesting. So he's had a pattern now of, just being away from you whilst he's with his parents. That doesn't sound really great. And it doesn't sound like he's really involved you with this. Sounds to me like, yeah, he's definitely got big self-esteem problems. On our drive back home, he asked me if I would have left him alone to exercise if I'd been his first time meeting my parents. And I said no, and he freaked out, claiming that his workouts didn't matter to me because I'd never been obese. That's not what you're saying, though. Like, Lisa's not saying that. Anyways, he said that not even his parents were a priority when he visited them. So I definitely wouldn't be. Okay, so basically what he's telling you is that his exercise is more important than you, Lisa. That's not a great thing to hear. That's like, now that is like a red flag to me. Massive red flag. And I know it could be hard to sort of sit with that in the moment because he's done all these amazing things leading up to this. You've had the 6 to 8 hour dates, etc. But no, like this guy's got his priorities twisted. And I like the fact that you wrote he freaked out about how you challenged him on this because it seems to me like he just thought this would be okay. And it sounds like he wasn't prepared for you to say no. And he obviously now feels like a bad person. So, yeah, interesting. He concluded that workouts came first and that oh, great, our relationship wouldn't work. I simply asked if he could try to see things from a different perspective. I wouldn't have done the same, but since I empathized with his feelings, I didn't complain. He agreed and apologized, saying he'd just gone crazy because he was unhappy with his body. Oh dear. That same week, I tested positive for COVID. He texted me while enjoying the weekend with friends, but I would have liked more attention, maybe a FaceTime call. When I told him that, he said, "Oh, Jesus." He said we should break up because, quote unquote, he couldn't read my mind. I need to ask for the things I wanted before getting upset and upsetting him. Jesus Christ, this man and his sensitivity. He takes on way too much of this stuff and he obviously feels a lot of shame. So, oh, Jesus, this man, he'll blow up a relationship if he was made to feel bad at any moment. A day later, he apologized, saying that I was the perfect girlfriend and he would learn to value me more, that his quote unquote walls would come down. He repeated that a lot. He often mentioned having barriers, but said he was gaining confidence in me and feeling safe. Oh man, he's got so much arrested development, Lisa. Just, oh, I'm feeling really like this is like whiplash sort of shit. Like the relationship is literally living and dying based on how he's feeling about himself. Ugh. Not okay. And we're only up to page 2 now. God, I see a pattern emerging. I noticed that prioritizing others was difficult for him. I asked if putting people first made him feel unworthy, if it reminded him of all the times he'd done so just to fit in while being bullied. He said he'd never thought about it like that, but that you might be right, and that he'd bring it up in therapy. I tried to help him see that I was not a bully. I was the one who loved him and made him a priority. He understood and tried to let his guard down. By that time, I was getting frustrated because intimacy started to fade, going back to his past relationships. In 2016, he had had his longest relationship ever, which was a year. He was 31, she was 48. Okay, so big age gap. They spent the last 8 months of their relationship without having sex and remaining friends for years. I think she was probably the Phantom X. In 2021, he was in a 3 month relationship with a woman who made him feel anxious yet passionate. He said that's the feeling he needed. Otherwise, he lost interest quickly. Something tells me that relationship probably wasn't that healthy. To help him find the excitement he was looking for, I suggested that once a month we try something new together, but it didn't help. Over time, I became increasingly insecure. He said he felt pressured by his job, his body, and our relationship, although the pressure never came from me directly. But because of this, he often considered breaking up, even though he knew it was just a way to escape discomfort, as he didn't really want to lose me. Okay, so this man has definitely got signs of relationship OCD. It sounds to me like he's oscillating between the stress of the relationship, the fact that he's behaving in ways that are not okay, and anytime you're setting a boundary with him, he's feeling attacked and feeling like you're bullying him when you're not. Like it really sounds, but I would even go beyond that. It doesn't sound like just a bullying sort of stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he's also had at least one parent, maybe even a dad, who didn't treat him well, because it usually doesn't just start there. To me, I wouldn't be surprised if, he has a very low threshold for feeling shame and he tends to internalize it and feel like he's a bad person and he tends to break up relationships whenever he feels that stress. And like I said it before about the previous relationship that was passionate, I mean, if that worked, why isn't he still with that person? So to me, when I hear this, I'm thinking, okay, I think that there's more to the picture than he's letting on. All right. At the end of August, he finally broke up with me, saying he'd been trying to be better for me, that he'd, then he, sorry, saying that he'd been trying to be better for me than he'd been for his previous girlfriends, but it didn't seem enough, even though he didn't do much. And I do believe he tried, and I always acknowledged his efforts. He also said he felt suffocated and trapped when I wanted time alone with him at home. He had the urge to be outside on the weekend, and sometimes I just wanted to have a quiet time with him. 10 days later, I reached out and we decided to try again. This is the pattern I'm talking about. Like, it's just this man, like, he's not capable of making sound decisions for relationships. I agreed to give him more space, yet he kept texting me all day long, fearful avoidant for sure. He would send me the good mornings to good evenings. Even though we spent a lot of time together, I felt him emotionally distant. He'd wake up at 4 to 5 a.m. to work out and was always sleepy when we met. I tried not to complain too much, but I didn't like how it was affecting our relationship. Fair enough. Can I take a moment here to say that avoidant narcolepsy is very much a thing, and I do think that a lot of them often come to these relationships with very little stamina and zest in life at times, because a lot of them. Okay, this is going into territory where I think there's a giant question mark on it. I know supposedly there's some research on this, but I've yet to see any concrete evidence on this. From a potential hormonal lens, there is a theory floating out on the webs, take this with a pinch of salt because it may not be true, that a lot of avoidants struggle to bond with their partners. They say it's mostly the dismissives, but I'd actually go and say the dismissive leaning fearfuls would be up there too. Where if because they don't have strong oxytocin production because of their fears of intimacy, right? And also the high functioning freeze, their nervous system when they're just not able to, feel relaxed with another human being. They're not able to bond properly. And as a consequence, they often aren't able to maintain those euphoric feelings, which they might get in a more turbulent relationship. That is a theory that's floating around on the internet. I personally haven't really seen much about the hormonal stuff. My reason for not really talking about it is because I just think it's kind of, I guess my attitude is it's like, I don't want to reduce people with avoidant attachment down to, well, they have hormonal differences, therefore they can't love you. Because I don't think it's as simple as that. It's kind of like the whole argument of, well, if you've got depression, it's mostly because you've got a thyroid issue. It's like, well, no, everyone's capable of experiencing depression. It's not exclusive to the damn thyroid. It can be. I'm not counting that out. But I just feel like there is danger if we go down that route without looking at other stuff holistically, like the nervous system. You know, I don't think it's a case that they can't produce oxytocin. I think it's very much a case of their wiring, their nervous system. If you're in the high functioning freeze, I don't think that's going to necessarily allow for much bonding to occur when your romantic arousal for someone is shut down because of your own freeze state as well too. Anyways, that's my little 2 cents on that one. Um, but yeah, back to the whole narcolepsy thing. Yeah, a lot of avoidant attachers can actually become very sleepy and very very distant, when it comes to interacting with you as time has gone on, because it's just too much for them. They can't handle it. And sleep becomes sort of like a coping mechanism from dealing with the discomfort of like getting close and intimate with someone. All right. He was distant even from his family. His mother has cancer, and although his parents live just 2 hours away, he rarely visits them. Once he cried, saying he wanted to be closer to them, but felt something pulling him away. Maybe because when he thinks he's going to lose someone, he prefers to stay distant so he can't handle loss. I offered to drive him there whenever he wanted or even to lend him my car, because he didn't have one, so he'd regret not being there for his mum. After celebrating our 6 month anniversary, we went to a hotel in another city for the first time to run a race together. I'd started running because of him. Now, that night, he asked if I had ever thought about breaking up with him, and I said no, and if we would be together. And he also added he wondered if we would be together forever. And I said, I hope so. Later, he noticed I was frustrated. I wanted to watch a movie, cuddle, but didn't have the courage to ask for it. Instead, we spent the evening sitting in the reception area because he wanted to drink, only going to our room when it was time to sleep. Okay, Lisa, good on you for noticing this upon reflection. One thing I would say is it can be very hard to speak up in these kind of dynamics if you haven't, had the opportunity to find your voice in these experiences. Many people don't. I know it's very easy for people to comment being like, why the hell didn't you speak up in these moments? it comes with time. It's very hard. There can be some understandable reasons for not doing that based on like the fawn response, based on, your own history with people and maybe feeling like you couldn't speak up for yourself as well too. So all that is to say, gently, is, you know, it happens. So, and it's something that you learn over time. Also, can I just say, Ricky is still clearly in relationship OCD land. Like the man is clearly still, ruminating on whether we should break up, whether we should stick together. He's got a lot of uncertainty. And his whole thing about not being able to be with his family, when they're going through a crisis like his mum with cancer, speaks clearly to the fact that he can't handle relationship adversity. Anyways, the next morning, we ran, and at night, there was a party I was really looking forward to. In the afternoon, he went out drinking with friends and didn't tell me. The only thing I ever asked for in the relationship was for him to let me know when he went out. I'd already explained that it triggered my insecurities when he suddenly stopped replying to texts, so I'd rather know he was with friends so I wouldn't even text him. He used to say it was something small and that the truth sorry. Let me start that sentence again. I'd already explained that it triggered my insecurities when he suddenly stopped replying to texts, so I'd rather know he was with friends so I wouldn't even text him. Fair enough. Good boundary, by the way. He used to say it was something small, and that the truth was that I didn't want him to go out with friends. Not even once did I say it bothered me. I didn't want to fight, so I said nothing, but I spent the whole party in a bad mood. Sad because he didn't mind upsetting me in one of the rare occasions we did something I wanted. Most of the time we did things for him, he'd been feeling down and I wanted to cheer him up. Yeah, so we can see here there's definitely a tendency for him to be quite selfish and very self-motivated, to manage his own emotions and not think about what's going on for Lisa. But he was so inexperienced, sorry. He was so inexperienced in relationships that having to ask for the bare minimum became exhausting. I guess it's why it became a big deal. No, this isn't a case of him necessarily being inexperienced in romantic relationships. He's had relationships. He's just bad at being able to, consider the feelings of another person. One thing to think about with relationships is we often think, oh, well, if they've had, previous history of relationships, they should know what they're doing. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's like, the whole thing with careers. Someone's resume doesn't mean they're capable for a job. With this, we have relationships with people every damn day. There's our friends, our co-workers, our loved ones, our romantic partner. And granted, the lines and the boundaries between each are understandably different, but what you got to understand is that when we're thinking about this guy in relation to, how he's behaving, I think it's fair to say that with his own selfish need to prioritize his own emotions, which is to not feel any distress, he's not going to be capable of actually, working through that without like some serious intervention. And I don't think the therapy he's doing is necessarily tapping into that at this particular point in time. Or at the very least, he's not ready to be with you, Lisa, from the sounds of it. But I can understand where that thought came from and why you thought that it was an inexperience issue. To me, it's not experience. It's his own, unfortunately, his limitations. So yeah. The next day, I told him how I felt. Good on you. That just prediction. I wouldn't be surprised if this is what sets him off and causes him to break up with you again abruptly. But I could be wrong. So, anyways, Lisa writes, the next day I told him how I felt, that I'd like to feel seen and heard the way I made him feel. And I am a prophet. And he broke up with me, saying neither of us was happy. And then if he didn't break up, I eventually would because he couldn't give me what I deserved. And it hurt him to know he often hurt me. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay. No, Ricky. No. Oh, she's not attacking you. Lisa's not saying you're a horrible boyfriend. Lisa is coming to you saying, hey, when you do X, it makes me feel Y. Can you please do A, B, C instead? It's interesting how he takes that feedback as such a personal attack. He's so sensitive, like a little butterfly, little Schmetterling, as the Germans would say. Like just, ugh, just so sensitive to, any of this. Oh, Jesus, I'm sorry you're going through this, Lisa, because this is heartbreaking. Anyways, he said he felt stupid for not being able to receive the love I was giving because it was the first time someone cared about him and treated him so well, to the point of questioning if being kind was really part of my nature with no manipulation, as he'd never experienced that. Okay, so he's obviously experienced people who've emotionally, manipulated him before, and he's not used to proper, more, uh, what's the term? He's obviously not used to people providing a more non-tit for tat form of love, if you will. There's no agendas or underlying manipulation in the care you give for others, Lisa. So it sounds to me like he's someone who, obviously, from the sounds of it, is not used to the kind of relationship you're providing, which is rough. And it's hard to conceive this given everything else he started out with. Oh dear. He said he felt safe with me, that I was the only person who truly knew him, as only with me could he be himself. He also said we were incompatible. Okay, so let's just take a little moment here. He said that he feels safe with you, yet he said that you make him feel incompatible. He said that, you're able to make him feel like himself compared to anyone else, yet you're also someone who he feels like I can't give you what you deserve, and you're someone who I feel like basically I just keep hurting you. This man is the definition of conflicted, as pretty much all severely avoidantly attached people are in these kind of cases. Like just what? It's like, bro, get your head checked. Like just what? What is going on? Jesus Christ. And I think the funny thing is, I think everything he's saying is absolutely genuine. It just sounds to me like he's really uncertain of himself. It's like anytime he feels bad, it's like, eject. No more relationship. I can't do this. You're clearly, someone who needs more than I can give. And then every time he misses you, he's like, no, I want you because you're amazing and it makes me feel good. It's like, bro, work on your stress tolerance. Anyways, ugh, confusing. He then added, we're incompatible. I like Italian restaurants. I'm sorry, he would say Lisa likes Italian restaurants, but Ricky, I like bars and I don't drink. Wow, such a huge incompatibility. Lisa likes the Italian restaurants and he likes the goddamn bars and drinking. So incompatible. Just like, how will you ever be able to reconcile those differences? Just, oh my God. Like, just so difficult to be able to navigate those. Anyways, eye roll. Uh, he also added he used to drink a lot, but I'm sorry, in our relationship, Ricky would drink a lot, but I never complained. I actually liked it because he was more caring after drinking. Yeah, I bet he was because his walls were down. Oh, that's literally what you wrote, as if his walls went down. Jesus. Like I said, I could be a prophet. He said he didn't even understand why I wanted to be with him. He preferred to end it while we still respected each other, and he also admitted that he probably would never find a woman like me again, and that in the future he might realize he lost the woman of his life. Ugh. I feel so sorry for you, Lisa. Hearing this would be breaking my heart. Like it's so brutal to hear this shit. Anyways, a week later, he lost his job and called me. I was hurt, but met up with him as a friend so he could vent. Oh, great. So now he's emotionally dumping on you and just using you emotionally. No, bro, not okay. Real baby energy from this guy. 10 days later, his parents came to visit him. His mum had made me a gift, so I met them briefly to pick it up. I started studying attachment style, so the next day I texted him asking him if we could talk. He replied telling me he had found a new job that day. We chatted and I opened up. I said that I would have never given up on him, that I tried to lift him up, and understood that growing might be challenging, especially when validated by childish friends with poor life values, even though he cherished me for trying to help him evolve, as he's a medium and has been told I was in his life for the better. Oh, as in like a psychic medium. Well, okay, well, that's very interesting because it seems to me like he couldn't predict how this was going to turn out to save his life. But, anyways, Ricky was kind, said I could reach out whenever I wanted, but he'd come to the conclusion that if he couldn't accept all the good things I did for him, it was because he wasn't ready for a relationship. Oh, baby. No. No. And I wasn't using that term as an affectionate thing. I was being like, you're acting like a baby. Like, no, that's not how this works. Lisa isn't saying that everything you do for her is bad. She's she's not even asking you to do good things for her. She's pointing out the behavior in which you're not actually, giving her a sense of safety and you're actually supporting her well-being in the relationship. Just no. Oh my God. Ugh, this is exasperating. He mentioned that people used to say he was getting old and should have someone, so he thought it was worth trying. But maybe he just wanted to be alone forever. Oh, God. I think he forgot he was the one who chased me and who made so many plans and told me I was the love of his life. Anyway, I just said I was sorry for that, but respected his decision. A week later, oh my God, Ricky, back off. A week later, he reached out telling me about the new job, asking how I was doing, and congratulated me on an award I won at the university. That was our last contact, which was in late November. I unfollowed him on Instagram, but his profile is public, so I could still see his stories anonymously. Soon, he started posting memes saying he'd lost his chance to be happy and that it's hard to find someone nice to date at his age. Once, he posted a picture of baking my favorite dish on Christmas Eve. He shared a funny video of a man apologizing for not being able to maintain a relationship in 2024. Isn't it wild how the fearful avoidance on the severe end who have communication deficits love to communicate through memes, songs, anything, but actually being direct and being like, yeah, I fucked up. It's almost like they do their confessions on social media without actually having the guts to be able to do it to their partner. Like, I understand why it happens and I can have empathy for why it's hard for them. I get all that. But when you're in Lisa's shoes, it's like, what am I supposed to do with this cryptic information? Do you want me to mind read? And the answer is yes, they want you to mind read. I'm not even saying that sarcastically. That is absolutely what they want you to do. Ugh. He would continue to keep posting stuff like this, but never knew I saw this. As much as I wanted to reply, I stayed silent. I could imagine. I wouldn't be surprised if your blood boiled a few times, being like, well, you broke this up. You did this to yourself. You, Ricky, were the basis for this. Anyways, Lisa writes, I'm in therapy, improving my spirituality, and even started a psychology degree. Welcome. Welcome to the world of psychology. I'm fighting to heal, but some quote unquote what ifs still haunt me. I tried to show him what true love is. I was excited to help him grow as a future nutritionist, and all I ever wanted from him was love and partnership. I made sure he knew it, as I think financial status might have been one more issue to him, but it never really mattered to me. I wonder if he'll ever regret losing me and if it would have worked out if we had taken things slower with me feeling less anxious. Thank you for reading my story, Ken. You've been an important part of my healing. God bless you. You are so welcome, and that feedback is very well received. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm just going to give a very realistic appraisal of the situation. You wonder if things would have worked out if you'd taken things slower. I'm going to just pronounce my own prognosis on this, and it's not going to be easy to hear. So, trigger warning, what I'm about to say is going to sound quite hard to hear, but I say this because I've worked on a lot of these cases now and I've read a lot of these stories. So here's what I'm about to say. If everyone's ready, the answer is no. It's not the pace that's the issue. It's his attachment wounding. It's his sensitivity to feedback and criticism. It's his relationship with shame. It's his unresolved arrested development that gets in the way of him being able to self-soothe in a relationship. You know, I can understand why you're blaming yourself, thinking it might have been the pace, worrying about, you feeling less jealous. But from what I've read, you weren't jealous. You were bothered. Jealousy is when you're like, I don't like you hanging out with that girl, guy, whatever it is. You need to stop hanging out with them. Being bothered is like, hey, when you hang around this number of, female friends in this way, I understandably get a bit triggered because it makes me feel like the energy and the priority is being shifted to them to such a degree where it takes away from our relationship And I feel like at times they're almost coming between us. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to see your friends. I am certainly not saying you can't have female friends. I think it's great that you have female friends. But I feel like sometimes they're almost used as a buffer between us. That's different. And so, to be honest, I'm not saying for a minute, Lisa, that, you haven't been jealous. Maybe you would, maybe you did feel jealous. That's one thing. But to be honest, what you shared was not really a red flag behavior from me. As in, when you called him out on this with his female friends, that wasn't a red flag behavior from your end. And again, the whole taking things slower, no, that won't fix this. I've actually seen these situations go through the boomerang cycles. It didn't get better. People tried working on it. They tried expressing themselves more clearly. They tried being more sensitive. But at the end of the day, it's the same damn thing. Almost happened like clockwork. It was like 3 months and then that was it. Oh, I can't give you what you're looking for. Now, you deserve someone so much better than me, etc. It's heartbreaking. It's horrible. It's not fair. But this is what happens. Now, is every severely avoidantly attached person going to necessarily, be a lost cause in terms of their relationships? Not necessarily. We might see like, some people try and obviously work on this. But generally, in my experience with these kind of cases, no, he's he's not going to get better anytime soon. He needs to have a bit of a come to Jesus moment, and I don't think he's had it yet, which is a shame. Anyways, Lisa, I'm gonna round out here. I am really sorry that you've gone through this because I can tell that this has been beyond confusing. And though you haven't written it explicitly, I could imagine it's been heartbreaking because this is a guy who is saying to you, "You're the love of my life." You're now in therapy studying psychology. You've had to learn about attachment theory. You've done a lot of things which are conventionally great things to do, but it does sound to me like he is just not ready for this kind of relationship on so many levels. Just, ugh. But that's not to dismiss the great aspects of him too, right? I'm sure he's been funny. I'm sure he's very loving and charming in a lot of ways. You know, even though he obviously had that mask on, I could understand also feeling the heartbreak of feeling like he couldn't even fight for the relationship that you were fighting for. He would say to you, you're the love of my life. You make me feel safe. I feel so authentic with you. But he just couldn't take that next step. I mean, that can feel like a massive fucking cop out. It's like you've gone to so much effort to be there for him, to really connect with him, and he can't even do that for you. That's just not fair. And it can feel really hard. Anyways, thank you for submitting your letter. And I look forward to being back on with more salacious Ken Reed's corner of dissecting people's experiences with those that have a severe avoidant attachment style. But if any of you got other, relationships you want to share with me that aren't exclusively avoidantly attached, by all means, send it to me. I love variety. But these I think are good to show there is a consistent pattern that plays out in these dynamics.